So I have to admit that I
Can Auto-Tune
absolutely
fix my
love
horrible
making music
singing?
now.
Let's find out.
And
I'm gonna
I've always
try to
loved
hit the
making
highest
music.
note
I mean,
that I can.
my family's musical. My father was very musical, and my grandfather was very musical. Even my little brother was very musical, who passed away at 16, and he could just play guitar by ear. I got my first Fender Strat when I was 12 and played that for a couple years. I can put some chords together and make it sound good. I'm not a musician, but I do like to play. But my niche is I write. I've wrote forever. I used to write poems. I don't know, starting at the age of 8, I got commended by my teachers for writing. And I got a lot of my stuff published at poetry.com in the 90s. And I wrote many poems since. My old website, creativegrace.org, creativegrace.com. Both of those sites you can look up at the Internet Archive, and my poetry is there. I have had about 50 different domains, websites of my own that I've created about 7,000 or 8,000 articles for, handwritten. No AI even existed back then. I wrote them myself, and they were good. And they're still available to be seen at the Internet Archive. I wrote poetry and published it at poetry.com when I was a kid. Probably about 500 poems so far that I've written of all kinds of things. And they are musically inclined. They work well with music, the way I wrote them. And I hear music when I do write. So now, thanks to AI and other softwares like Auto-Tune, I'm able to put my poetry that I've written on paper for years and never really gotten out because it's really not digestible. I put it into music format to where it is very digestible and easy to listen to and easy to absorb, and now I'm producing a lot of music. I've produced 51 songs this summer. And it's not like I'm doing what Sublime did or other rappers, where I took samples of other people's music and I took words and lyrics from other people's music and then I tried to make it my own. Like, for one example, with Sublime, and I love this band, you look up The Rivers of Babylon, which was written and sung by the Melodians in the 60s, and then Sublime took the same beat, sample, and lyrics, and then they made it their own. And it sounded great. And yes, Sublime used all kinds of software to improve their voice and their, sound. Taylor Swift, my son's favorite band, does the same. So when it comes to, like, my kids now are listening to the music I've sent them that I've made. And one complaint is that, it's yucky AI, it's yucky AI. Well, I'll tell you one thing about my music is, one, I wrote it. Two, my voice is on about 10 of those songs. And three, my music isn't sampled from anybody. I don't owe any credit to anybody. Nobody wrote my lyrics. I wrote those. Nobody wrote my music. Software helped me with that, just like it does with Taylor Swift or Kanye West or Post Malone or any of them. They all use these softwares that I use. Difference with me is that I can't afford to go pay a songwriter to write my songs like a lot of them do. I can't pay a backup vocalist to help sing my songs and make it sound better. I can't pay some band to play my music. I have to improvise. I have to come up with it myself. But all of it is 100% mine. And the good thing about this, in multiple ways, the good thing about this is, so I make a lot of content on YouTube, right? And when I make that content,
Dowling and Auto-Tune,
it can be claimed by another artist if I used a sample of their music.
For 2022.
If for example, I did what Sublime did and I sampled other people's music, then I would owe the original producer that I sampled from all of my commissions on YouTube. They would put a copyright claim on my content and then they would monetize it and I wouldn't get any credit for it. I also have 2 radio stations. I have AtaiIreland.com and I have Disruptarian.com. And both of those radio stations play my music. I produce 51 songs, and they play my music on those songs, or on those radio stations, and I don't have to license it. If I was to license a radio station, it would cost me $915 a year. And if I don't, then I can get sued. So I produce my own music. I play my own music on my radio, and it sounds good, and it's unique. It's not like it's somebody else's music, like that I've just copied and remade. It's my music. It's very, very distinctly my music, and you can tell that it's my music and differentiate it from other music because it is so classically my music.
When I recently interviewed Billy Corgan of Smith,
yes, all of these different artists use auto-tune. All these different artists use beat makers and synchronization software and all these other things, to produce background music or melodies or beats for their songs. And then they hire a backup singer and they employ auto-tune and they employ all these other things. And, some of them even have other people write their music and then they just sing it. So I don't feel like I'm cheating as much as a lot of these mainstream musicians are cheating. A lot of them are cheating a lot worse than me. I admit to the music I use. You won't hear Taylor Swift talking about how she uses auto-tune. I've talked about it many times, like in this video. I'm just honest about it. That's the difference. So I wish my kids weren't so angsty about it because I really did put a lot of thought and energy into my music that I made for them. But their mom is complaining, I can't get work anymore. AI has taken my industry over. I can't do it anymore because, AI does it better and whatnot. Well, they hear that and they hate AI because of it. But, it's just like the Industrial Revolution where machines came in and started doing the jobs that men used to pound out by hand. It's going to take over whether we like it or not. AI is here to stay. But for people like me who have, a heartfelt song to sing and, play for the masses, I want, to be heard. It's great for me to be able to produce music now without hiring a backup singer and a songwriter and a beat, band to make beats for me or melodies or whatever. I can just do it all myself and I don't owe any credit to anybody. And then my words, my thoughts, my emotions are out for the public to hear. My ex-wife would make content for our media business and I would give her a task. I would say, hey, I need this, this, and that for the next blog post. Can you make me some graphics? And she would make 3 or 4 different options. It would take her a couple of days. She'd get back to me. Sometimes I wouldn't like any of them, but I would have to settle for the one that I liked the best, even though it wasn't what I wanted, because it takes so much time for her to do that. So instead of waiting days or weeks now for content to be created, I go to AI, I can make 100 different things that I can choose from with my parameters in the ways that I want it made. And then out of those 50 or 100, I can choose 1 or 2 within minutes instead of days or weeks. So it's just making my life as a content creator so much easier and making my product so much better. And yeah, people like my ex-wife who, depend on creating content are upset about it. But then I put the mirror up to her. I'm like, yeah, but what, didn't you use Photoshop? Didn't you use Adobe Illustrator? Didn't you use all these other softwares? Well, yeah. Well, didn't you clip things from other people's work and put it into your own work and, rework it to make it your style, but it came from somebody else's ideas? Well, yeah. I mean, I remember one of our first clients, Chapman Roofing, and I had this idea to use Stonehenge, and she grabbed Stonehenge and she clipped it out and then she put a roof on it and made a graphic out of it. But it was somebody else's picture, somebody else's idea, but she brought it into Photoshop, worked it up, and made it her own, with her own flavor, and then sold it to the customer. And this is how we produced a lot of content during our 20 years together, or 18 years together, is, somebody else had an idea. She would grab the idea and go search the internet for relative images. She'd pull those images into Photoshop. She'd rework them, combine them, and release them as hers. How is that any different than what I'm doing? Except for the fact that I'm not using anybody else's work. I'm not sampling anybody else's product. I'm not using anybody else's lyrics. It's all mine, 100%. So yes, I'm very happy that AI exists, and I'm very happy that all of those hundreds of poems that I've written can be put into music and released as music now. Just like a studio artist would do. They would hire a band, they would hire, a producer, they would hire a songwriter, they would use this software, that software, and all the other software, and then they'd produce it very similar to how I do it. I just cut out the middleman.